Hello everybody. Today we're going to be starting a new pot, and this pot is referencing the pot from 2 days ago. The one that I made yesterday, I thought I could make some improvements. Sort of the top flower part didn't look as blossomy, it didn't look as like flowery as I think it should have. So today we're just going to get right into it, and I'm just wedging some clay like I always do. At the end of my wedging, I put less pressure on and turn and wedge faster so that I can get it rounder on the top. And so it kind of folds in back in itself and starts making that sort of cone shape. Again, rolling that so it splats out wider, double slapping it. You don't really need to do that, but I always think it's kind of funny. It works, so why not, right? We're going to start with coning up and down the clay, like what we always do. And again, in this video, I'm being a little bit quiet. I thought that the video yesterday was probably one of my best, so I think I'm going to replicate that until I discover something new. Yeah, right there, my hand position, I feel like I went a little bit too high. Like I always say, you don't need to go that high. Sometimes it's just nice if you can have that clay kind of not fold, but go over the edge, and so it creates a new edge. Then it can help with some of the clay not being centered towards the bottom of your mound. But you can always just whip out like the hammer, like right now, and you can just get that thing right on center, no problem. Just making my hole here. Yeah. Sometimes the more drastic of an angle you take on the interior, the easier it is to move that, right? It's almost like you're cutting into it, and that can help with opening up the clay if you're ever struggling. Just try to, instead of just like a flat, just scoop like a C and try to scoop back like that. And I think that can help you out a lot. Again, getting all that sludge off the end of my ribs so I don't get any like hard pieces in it. This time I actually did, but it ended up being okay, and I just scooped it out earlier. This time I decided to do a little spiral. I don't think you can even see the inside of the pot after it's done, but I know it's there. Stuff that came off is just stuff that wasn't fully attached. Maybe I cut a little bit too hard with my fingers scooping. First pull was a success. Now our second pull here. It's looking good. Again, I've been going kind of slower these days on those the second pulls, and I feel like it's helping me out a little bit more. I'm really thinking about getting my thought process for this pod is, okay, we want some more height, and how are we going to do that? We're going to go a little bit thinner and more towards the center with the poles. Not thinner as in clay, but thinner as in the cylinder is just smaller, I think somebody was using the water upstairs in the video, so that's why that sound. And you can see I'm trying to get it that thinner on that thing, but you can tell I'm still figuring it out, but once you get to a certain height, you really start like pulling the clay, and I think that's one of my problems is once I get higher or just a little bit taller, some of the movement of the clay isn't just straight up like what it should be, so that's something I think I need to rectify in my own throwing. But we still got a good pot today. I've had problems with that before where I get too high and just the top gets all out of whack. I had some thickness right there on that top edge, and so sometimes just going out and then collaring back in can help. I kept getting like if that ever happens when you're collaring it in and you get these little like notches that go in, just compress it, smooth it out. They will keep showing up every time you collar, at least in my experience, but don't worry about it. You can always smooth them out later. this was where I had my biggest scare, actually. Was I actually had it a little bit thinner than what I normally had on the bottom, and it kind of made the bottom uneven. So I was like, okay, if the bottom's going to be uneven right at the edge, hey, let's just do a full pull and try to get some of that unevenness out. And I think it worked pretty well here. Again, this pull I think was the best pull of the day. Really, it was a nice one. Kind of got a little bit funky towards the top, but I think I got it pretty even across the board, as in thickness, and it felt pretty good too. When you'll feel the pulls. Those are your butter moments. Always say the butter moments are what you're aiming for. And when you have a butter moment, when the clay feels like butter, stop and just like try to think about what you did. Was it you spread your hands a little bit further apart? Did you take a more drastic angle? Was your line of motion in a more even way? Like, these are all things that you can do to improve some of your throwing, is focusing on those butter moments. And here I am. I'm just going to be smoothing out that and compressing the outside here. It was a little bit thin, so I was getting nervous, especially towards that top. You can see it just doesn't really help with keeping it on center, but you are just compressing that clay. And I have a couple of attack plans here. I'm like, okay, do I do another pull? Do I start collaring? And I'm thinking about it, and I'm trying to examine, like, where am I at the pot, right? Is it worth risking the pot if the next pull could destroy the top, right? You can already see I'm having a lot of problems with the top. So I'm just like, okay, let's just try to collar it in, condense it, and then we can work on the bottom later. And so I ended up collaring it in, and I told you guys at the beginning of the video, I just wanted to see if I could get that top a little bit smaller, a little bit more condensed, and a little bit more loose than what it was yesterday. Yesterday's pot was a little bit sloppy with the top blossom part, and so I was like, all right, well, we can just try to get it a little bit more like closer together on that top. Maybe narrow, a more narrow neck on the pot, and a little bit taller on that neck, and we'll see what happens. And so that's what I was focusing a lot on today. I think I felt that this pot was going to collapse probably right around this part. The top's pretty wild, right around where the shoulders are pretty wild. And so, I'm just sort of thinking, I think I even have a moment where maybe it is right here, where I'm just like, oh, okay, I need to stop. And I know it's just going to collapse here. And so it might have been right after this. As soon as I established that shoulder, I was like, oh, it's going to be in some trouble here. And I think I wanted to go back in. Let's see. No. I did this pull. Okay. Yeah, that's what happens. I do this pull, and then after, I think I want to go smooth out the throwing lines I just did, but then I have second thoughts. And then right there, you can do that sometimes. If you feel like it's gonna collapse, just pull that shoulder that you did and up a little bit as you're going through it, and then try to redirect it back into the pot. And sometimes that can prevent you from a loss or collapse. But this is the moment where I was like, nah, it's just gonna collapse. I gotta just go for it. I'm gonna start collaring it in until it starts collapsing on itself. There we go. And then I'm going to go in, and I'm just gonna define the twist here. I think I did 4 this time, and maybe yesterday's was 5. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I think 4 it is. I did 4. And the 4, I think, on a more medium pot, it makes there more space, and you'll see later it actually starts folding and collapsing over itself. And I actually think that looks really beautiful um, worm-like, snake-like, has a lot more movement. And so I was pretty excited with how this pot ended up turning out. Uh, as soon as that bottom happens, you've got to hurry up before it fully collapses and get that top situated. And so here I am doing my my twist pole, very slow. It ripped a little bit, but I was like, okay, you're gonna want the impulse to fix it. Just fix it. And sometimes it works, but this time I was like, you know what? I just gotta try to keep this, touch the clay as little as possible. And I think in moments when stuff starts collapsing, the more you fuss with it, the more you fiddle with it, you're toast, And here I am, I'm looking for the right spot. I'm like, where does this go? Am I going to flap it over? And I decide right here is where I'm going to flap it. And as I'm flapping it, you can see I just start pointing my fingers down, and it really draws that rim. And that's why keeping that rim as sharp is important. It creates this beautiful flower bud shape on the top there. And I thought that this pot actually used the shoulder, even though the shoulder's collapsed on this pot compared to yesterday's. I thought that the shoulder just matched this perfectly. It's using the sort of the collapse form from a couple days ago where I cut and I twisted the things up on the flower pot. But I didn't end up cutting, and I thought it was just perfect the way it was. I thought that the bottom spoke or talked loud enough, the top talked loud enough, well, not the bottom, the middle talked loud enough, the top talked loud enough, and then I thought as soon as I add this bottom, it's just going to look great. And so here we are. We're getting ready to, do our little edges here. And right now I'm actually just compressing and trying to throw a little bit of that clay, getting it ready. And then in a second here, I'll go in and I'll define. You can even see it's really collapsing now, but boy, does that look great. And I'm not working the top anymore at all, so it can collapse however it wants. It's going to be okay, Sometimes you can even hit the bat itself, and you can force a collapse to happen. Here I am going with this. I had one mess up here, but I fixed it in a little bit, and I thought it ended up turning okay. It was just a little bit too tight, and there I am fixing it. Where I patched it, it wasn't really that great, but it's okay. Just do your best on that. I thought to myself, I'd rather have it look more, have an even distribution of those undulations rather than having a more crisp edge. So I could have stopped right when I did the undulations, but I just wanted to define it to try to make it a little bit more even. It's not perfect, but it was acceptable, and I'm sure when I have the glaze on there, it's going to end up being okay. Here we are getting some of that water out of the bottom area, and I'll use a little tool here. That's a fun, just put that thing, you can see all that water building up. It's nice to kind of suck up some of that water and just try to get it away from that bottom edge so it doesn't fissure, the clay fissures from the overhydration and then falls apart. And so I was just trying to say that I noticed when I was throwing it was a little bit thin right when the curve to the skirt of the pot happened. But I tried to get the water out. But you know what? Thanks for watching. That's the pot of the day. Looked great. All the best and strong mentality. Peace out.